We live in a world of hidden histories of all kinds. And here to talk about one of the hidden histories that's the most amazing thing you've ever heard is our good friend, L.A. Marzulli.
Great to be here, Gary. Thanks for having me on.
It's always great to talk to you, L.A., and I know in advance that we're not going to have enough time. Too many things to talk about. L.A. has, of course, written this book. Really, it's a three-parter, but it's called On the Trail of the Nephilim, and I'd like to just start by talking about Nephilim, because there's a little bit of discussion these days. Oh, Nephilim, you know, you guys have great imaginations. There really were no Nephilim, and Nephilim, if they did exist at all, weren't very important, so forth and so on. Well, you've devoted a lot of study to the Nephilim.
Basically, I've devoted my life to the study of a Nephilim, and that became, the springboard for that was my mentor, Dr. I.D.E. Thomas's book, The Omega Conspiracy, which completely changed my life. And in that book, Dr. Thomas starts talking about the Nephilim, and I had no idea of who these entities were. And I remember, this goes back 40 years ago this year when I first became a Christian. I'm reading through the Bible cover to cover, and I get to the Genesis flood, and I'm going like, what's going on here? Why does God destroy the earth with a flood? And then later on, Sodom and Gomorrah. Is this God of the Old Testament somehow different than the God of the New Testament? Is he capricious and maniacal and just destroying everybody because of his wrath? Is he malevolent? And then you get finally to the Promised Land, and this mandate comes down from the holy God of the Bible, this loving God of the Bible, and he says, wipe them all out, talking about the tribes which are in the Levant, in the Promised Land, when Joshua and Caleb were about to enter. Wipe them all out, men, women, and children. That's genocidal. And I remember at that point, when I got to that point, I almost took the Bible and threw it against the wall. I'm a brand new Christian because I didn't understand it. I couldn't fathom why this was happening. And that plagued me for about 8 years until I discovered Dr. Thomas's book, who talked about the Nephilim. And once we plugged the Nephilim, which are the progeny, the offspring of the fallen angels of heaven, the fallen angels that rebelled, and the women of earth, creating a hybrid entity known as the Nephilim, the whole Bible opens up. And we realize, as you talked about, it's a seed war.
It's a seed war, and by the way, it's a revolt. It's a revolution. The main theme, I think, in the Bible is revolution against the Creator God. By the ones he loved, he created the angels. They praised him. They saw what he was doing, how wonderful it all was. And then their leader, Satan, decided to lead a revolution. It sounds like life on planet Earth, and it is. It goes back millions of years, I think.
I agree.
But essentially, in that revolt, a number of sub-themes emerge, and the Nephilim is one of them, right at the very beginning of the Bible.
It is, and what's alarming, the Genesis 3:15 statement basically, tells us, and I love the way, modern theologians will tap dance around that and basically torture the text, trying to make it say something other than what a 13-year-old can read that and understand what it says. The offspring of the serpent will be at enmity, at war with the offspring of the woman. He, Messiah, will crush the serpent's head. You, the serpent, will crush or bruise his heel. So that sets up the rest of the biblical narrative. I mean, it really does. It's a seed war between the offspring of the dragon, the fallen one, Satan, and the offspring of the woman, the Messiah. And what's amazing, the moment we plug in the Nephilim, then everything begins to make sense. The flood of Noah begins to make sense.
Right.
The 5 kings, the Tower of Babel, Sodom and Gomorrah, what's happening later on. Why is it that when Moses shows up in Egypt, there's a full-blown occult paradigm in existence, which is global, by the way. So when he throws down his staff and it becomes a serpent, no one bats an eyelash. Well, we've seen all this before, Mo. Who cares? And the Egyptian guys throw down their stats and it becomes serpents, because this full-blown occult paradigm is in operation. Nothing has changed in thousands of years. It's just gone underground and become a little more subtle.
Now, God told Father Abraham at a certain time in his life to go to the promised land and settle down there, and that he, the Lord, had a plan for Abraham. Abraham, who had come out of pagan existence in the east, trekked over, came across the rivers, and that's, by the way, where the word Hebrew comes from. The one who crosses over, he crossed over the rivers and came to the promised land, set up, and I've got something that I want to ask you here in a minute. He set up a society as God had instructed. And I'm looking at Genesis 14, and you know what I'm going to read. In Genesis 14, you have Abraham in the promised land being attacked by 4 Gentile kings. And as you read down through here, they're joined in battle. And if you come to verse 5, it says, in the 14th year came Kedorlaomer and the kings that were with him, and smote the Rephaims in Ashtaroth Karnaim, and the Zuzims in Ham, and the Amims in Shaveh Kiriataim. So there are 3 species of non-human creatures who were smitten in that war as a byproduct, if you will, of the war between Abraham and the 4 kings. The giants got involved. We speak of the Rephaim, but actually there are a number of different names, and in your lectures you go into this. That's a very important theme.
Well, it is, because unless we understand what is happening on this planet, this hidden history, which has been, even the church has, backpedaled from it and won't really deal with it, and until we come to grips and understand that the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterwards, like a Genesis 6 account, we don't have a clue as to what's going on.
Right.
We're walking through the biblical narrative literally with blinders on, and we don't understand even who the Antichrist will be, which in my opinion is a Nephilim hybrid entity, literally the direct seed of the serpent.
And the Nephilim, as spoken of in Genesis 6, have a long and contorted history that comes right up into the days of King David and Goliath. And Goliath, let's face it, was a Rephaim, and meaning an offspring of the original fallen ones, the Nephilim. So they were real. They were very, very central in creating the history of the Middle East. And then at a certain point in time, God commanded that those species be eliminated. And that's a story in itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where you're on the trail of the Nephilim, because when you're on the trail, you're talking about this particular point when the giants had to scatter because God commanded that they be destroyed.
We see that, but we also see remnants of their handiwork, what I've come to call Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology. And that's what the book really delves into and shows that there is a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated by the so-called scientific community, and even within the church won't deal with it per se. And yet it's all over the Americas, absolutely all over the Americas. We find evidence of it, and that's why I am on the trail, to expose the deception of the prince, the power of the air, and to herald the return of the King Jesus. That's our mission statement. And so the book and the DVDs, the series On the Trail of the Nephilim, I'll just give you one example. The first time I was in Peru, and we went to a place called Sacsayhuaman, and these huge megalithic stones, and some of these stones are like 70, 80, even 100 tons, and they're put together seamlessly. Now, we've talked about this before, and the mainstream archaeologists, well, the Incas were master stone builders. Nonsense. The Inca even say and state that it was there when they came into the land. And that same phrase, this was here when we came into the land, we hear it in the Americas when the first white settlers circling back got to the Great Circle Mound, and they asked the Native Americans, well, who built this? Native Americans said, we don't know. It was here when we got here. Now, that's immediately dismissed by mainstream archaeologists who insist that, well, Native Americans just forgot that they had built it, which is the catch-all phrase that they use, which in my opinion is utterly disingenuous, because even today in modernity, modern-day chiefs like Chief Wallace will state that they didn't build a serpent mound. They didn't build a circle mound or the octagon mound. That these and there's, as we show in the films, there's advanced mathematics, advanced geometry embedded in these huge earth cliffs. And folks, we're not talking about, a little circle of dirt a few feet high, maybe 20 feet across. The Great Circle Mound has a moat which is dead level, which is over 1,200 feet in diameter. And the only way you can see it is from the air. The Octagon Mound is 50 acres plus. The octagon, which is an irregular octagon, encompasses this 50 acres of land. When I was in it, you have no idea what you're looking at. You have no idea what it really is. You've got to be in the air. Who is the prince of the power of the air? This is right here in the Americas. And this is why I'm on the trail.
Yeah, and look at all the earthworks in South America, all over the place.
Everywhere.
That can only be seen from an
the air.
airplane. If you stand on the ground, you see maybe a few rocks moved around, but if you go up a few thousand feet and look down, you have figures. Now, who made those and how?
And why would they do it? Why do they go out of their way to do it? When you're standing at the Great Serpent Mound in Ohio, and I've been there 3 times, we filmed there, flew a drone over there, and that serpent iconography, which is the largest serpent on the planet, at least that we think. There may be one that Derek Gilbert's been hitting at in next to Gilgal Raphaim in Israel, but I digress. But when you're there and this undulating serpent over the terrain, I'm going, well, what is this? You don't know what it is at ground level. So they build a tower, and you can go up in that about 2.5, 3 stories. And even then, there's the tail and there's the head. It's only when we flew the drone up 600, 700, 800 feet, 1,000 feet up, all of a sudden this thing comes into focus. This undulating serpent, and by the way, those undulations point to the equinoxes. And then the serpent's mouth, which is open like this, and in front of it is an egg, in my opinion. And that serpent is in the act of trying to devour that egg, which is unbelievable because it points back to the Genesis 3:15 narrative, and that the seed of the woman.
That motif is still in use today.
In China.
If you go to China, and where they worship the dragon, you have the Chinese New Year, where they march in the street with a dragon, and the dragon is snapping at a large round object.
They don't even know what it is. They're just doing this mindlessly year after year.
It's trying to, of course, the Chinese believe that the dragon is trying to regain its lost powers by seizing this fiery ball. And that's actually in the Chinese New Year.
It's amazing.
So essentially what we've got is a theme and variations from all over the world.
It's global.
That goes back around 6,000 years. And it dates back to the corruption of the planet by the Nephilim, when they came down and started their projects, which are mostly a mystery to us right now.
They are. I want to just give you one little teaser in the book, and this is in the film series On the Trail of a Nephilim. The next episode, we have 3 episodes out right now. Episode 4 will be on America's Stonehenge. I first visited this. It's in the book, and this is the work of Kelsey Stone, who is the 3rd generation of caretakers on the site. This site is located in New Hampshire. It's 4,000 years old. It's very complex, much more information than we really have time to talk about. But one of the most astounding dynamics of that research with America's Stonehenge is when you take the center of the henge, which we'll say is here, and you draw a line, straight line out to the winter solstice standing stone, which is right there, shortest day of the year. And you draw that line and you go on Google Earth, which is what Kelsey Stone did, and you extend that line, and you extend it, and you extend it a little further. You wind up splitting the center trilithon. A trilithon is 2 uprights and a cross piece in Stonehenge, England, thousands of miles away, and that's not a coincidence. There's other information which I can't give out right now. I wish I could. It'll be in part 2 of that series, which blew us away completely.
Now, what L.A. is saying is that this is not a local phenomenon. This is a global phenomenon. And for anything to be global in nature, that means that you have to have some kind of an ability to go around the world or to coordinate events around the world.
How was that done 4,000 years ago?
4,000 years ago.
Impossible.
Today, if we were to start such a project, we would use satellites. And
You could do it in modernity. You could do it now. But
you could
not
do it
then.
now. You could locate something, with a laser beam from a satellite on the ground and put a mark, and then you could go several thousand miles and put another mark. But for them to have done it then means at least that they were able to, and I hesitate to say this because somebody out there is going to say, oh, you're absolutely over your head now. But it means they had to be able to fly.
Right.
In some way.
Who is the prince of the power of the air?
Ta-da, there he is.
I mean, who is the prince of the power of the air? It's the dragon. It's Satan. And still is. And that's what we're looking at. And that's why archaeologists, because they don't have a supernatural framework, they don't believe in the Bible as we do, so they can never, they learn, but they never get to the solution. They never understand what it is they're truly looking at. But let me just finish with one little point on America's Stonehenge. That alignment, you can only do it, as you talked about, from the air. That's not a coincidence, and that basically points, in my opinion, to the dragon. But what we discovered, and what Dennis Stone, is Kelsey's father, Dennis Stone showed us, blew us away, because there are other alignments. And then when I went to France, we discovered, and this was this year, we discovered other alignments on camera that we did. So we didn't even know what we were getting into when we were filming this with Howard Crowhurst about Karnak, and it just absolutely blew us away. So all this will be in coming films, 4 and 5 and 6, and on it goes with On the Trail of a Nephilim. But that Stonehenge, that line from America's Stonehenge out to the Winter Solstice Standing Stone, and extending that, which splits the center trilithon and Stonehenge, England, thousands of miles away, that's not a coincidence. And it's very deliberate, and it's the fingerprints of a supernatural and the fingerprints of a dragon.
Now, I know what L.A.'s motive is because I've talked with him for hours, and he and I agree on a large number of things. I know what your motivation is. I'm a Bible teacher. That's what I call myself. People say, what do you do? I always say, I'm a Bible teacher. That's it. And why do I teach the Bible? For one reason, to establish the reality and the plan of God the Father and His Son, the Lord Jesus Christ, through the action of the Holy Spirit. That's what I'm teaching. And once you begin then to see that God is really active on this planet, and that He has a long-term plan, and that He is opposed by a group of rebels. That's the story of the Bible. And all of these sub-themes, such as Trail of the Nephilim and so forth, are part of that huge story.
And what's interesting is, people go, well, what does this have to do with Jesus? Well, Paul talks about this, and he says, the elements or the elementary, if I can use that word, of salvation. Now, we're way past that. I get that. I'm a sinner saved by grace through the work of the cross of my Lord and Savior Jesus, the Messiah, the Anointed One. But that's just square one.
That's right.
And now we move into the deeper things, the mysteries of God. And what God is showing me through this work is that these rebel angels were here, and they set up shop numerous times all over the planet and wanted to be worshipped as gods. And we get this everywhere from Greek mythos to what's going on in India to what happened all over Europe with the pantheon of gods to South America. Literally, it's everywhere, to the shamans that exist today in the Amazon that are taking ayahuasca. It's everywhere.
Everywhere, including under the ocean. There are artifacts of huge cities under the ocean. One off the west end of Cuba, one off of the southeast coast of the United States, one off the coast of India. Underwater cities. How did they get underwater? Well, the Bible talks about a great flood. Why was the great flood imposed on planet Earth? Because God clearly states in Scripture that He became very, very disheartened by what had developed with the fall of man and the subsequent arrival of the Nephilim. So this is a huge story. And you, I hate to say this because it's become such a cliche, but you are on that trail, on the trail of making this story understandable.
You know, people say that some people will say, well, what do the giants have to do with us? And there aren't any around here, and we can't see any pictures. And right here in this book, there's a picture that I discovered in the archives of Catalina Island. And it was taken by a very primitive archaeologist by the name of Ralph Glidden out on Catalina Island, which is part of the Channel Islands, which go from Santa Barbara in the Pacific Ocean, north of Los Angeles, all the way down to San Diego. And Catalina is sort of one of the bigger ones, and I've been out there numerous times. Well, Ralph Glidden was doing these primitive archaeological digs on the Channel Islands from 1919 and 1921. He was employed by the Hay Museum. The Hay Museum later got gobbled up by the Smithsonian. And he has a picture, and I discovered this picture in the archives. And the reason I got out there, I gave $1,000 to the contribution to the museum because they were making a new museum, and that's how they let me into the archives where no one gets to see. And they had museum boxes and all these pictures and everything and letters and all of his works. And so they asked me, well, what do you want to see first? The pictures, please. So they bring out these boxes. And most of the time when you're in the archives, this doesn't happen. You can spend days there and not hit pay dirt. I'm hitting pay dirt in the first hour. And what it was, elongated skulls, 6 fingers on the skeletons, all that was there. And then we got to the Ralph Glidden picture standing in a recently excavated grave. We can show that on the screen, holding a shovel, and in front of him is a very large skeleton in situ. It's not a pile of bones. You can see it. Enormous skull, enormous skull. And what we did is we had 3 different researchers, and this thanks to you, who told me that they can do this. They digitized the picture, realized where the camera was, how far everything was from one another, and they created digital models of this thing. All 3 researchers put that skeleton at just around 9 feet. And that's what we're looking at.
And
that's
it was
it
was not a sickly, weakly skeleton. It was not.
No,
it was a husky, robust 9-footer. And
that's in the book.
On and on the story goes. L.A. is talking about this book, On the Trail of the Nephilim. By the way, we're offering this to you for a gift of $50, free shipping anywhere in the United States. Go to the online bookstore, prophecywatchers.tv. Scroll down, you'll find L.A.'s name and all of the books. You'll find this offer, On the Trail of the Nephilim book. And again, yours for $50, free shipping anywhere in the United States. This is a book. It's on heavy clay coat, glossy paper with, hundreds, I suppose.
Yeah, over 350 full-color photos.
Beautiful, beautiful pictures. I'm looking at one right now that just blows my mind. Whoa, because you can't build something like that.
No, you can't.
Using today's technology.
It'd be very difficult.
And he has gone all over the place. This is a wonderful coffee table book, by the way. Leave it out, and it'll start many discussions.
Many conversations.
In your home. And by the way, those discussions are designed to lead one toward our Lord, because in his word, he describes exactly what went wrong and helps us to understand all these things that would otherwise not be understandable. By the way, we also have 3 DVDs here, and we're offering those to you for $25 each. The first one, The Mysterious Moundbuilders, the Mathematical Mysteries of the Moundbuilders. And boy, there are mathematical mysteries. In fact, you're still working on the mathematical mysteries of the Moundbuilders. And this one, Voices from the Other Side, Secrets of the Supernatural. Slightly off the topic we're on today, but not really, because the dark side is definitely connected to what you're studying. And I think you've documented that in this 3rd DVD.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. When we were filming for Secrets of the Supernatural, what we discovered there, again, blew our mind. We were out on sites which we believe were Nephilim burial sites, and there were all sorts of supernatural activity, some of which made it into the film. And it was nothing scripted. It's not like one of these ghost things, but there was this woman who had this little device called an ovilus, and we were in an area, and she turns this thing on, and it says, witch. And I'm kind of going, wow, that's bizarre. And we walk another 50 feet in this area, and then it says evil. And at this point, I go, wait a minute, I know what this is. This is high-tech necromancy. I can't do this.
Right.
And on film, the cameras are rolling. I pray against this thing. I tell her to turn it off and then turn it back on. The word holy comes up. And they were blown away. I was blown away. But that's some of what we get into.
You can see that L.A. walks a bit of a different path than the rest of us. I enjoy talking with him, could talk with him by the hour, and because every time we talk, he's got something a bit new, or sometimes a lot new. All of this, by the way, can be obtained in a package we're calling the Kingdom of the Giants package. Once again, it's in our online library as the Kingdom of the Giants package. That's the book, all 3 DVDs for your gift of $100, free shipping anywhere in the United States. And believe me, I've looked at all this. I've gone through the book several times, and I believe in what L.A. is doing.
Thank you.
He's got a calling, he's got a mission, and let's sort of conclude on your calling and your mission.
Well, look, I'm on the trail, and I'm passionate about it because people need to see this, even in the Americas. I mean, there's stuff everywhere. There's ancient glyphs in Oklahoma. Right here in Oklahoma, there are ancient glyphs, and these glyphs...
And there used to be hundreds of mounds that got dynamited.
And they were all... There you go. So, I mean, there's a whole hidden history in the world, and we're uncovering some of it, and we're bringing it to light. And I'm excited by the people that we interview, the people that we bring in, anthropologists, archaeologists, medical doctors, surgeons, surveyors, and all of them agree that something is going on.
Now, we've got a minute left. There's an opposing force out there. Everywhere you go, you find that people are trying to destroy evidence of this early culture, or perhaps a demonic culture might be a better way of describing it. And there is an active program to eliminate any evidence that might link modern man with these ancient events.
There is a concerted effort to quash anything that points back to a supernatural worldview, because it goes against the Darwinian paradigm. And that's deliberate. That's deliberate.
Not only deliberate, but very, very, very active. Well, I'm looking forward to June 18th through 21st of this year in Colorado Springs, Colorado, at the Future Vision 2020 conference. And you'll have a chance not only to hear L.A. speak, which he does in wonderful fashion, but you get to meet him and shake his hand, talk to him, ask questions. Maybe you got a question that you think, well, I'm not going to write L.A. because I don't even know how to put this on paper, and besides, he wouldn't pay any attention to me.
I would.
But he would. And at a conference, you'll have the opportunity to meet people, to meet and greet, and actually answer their questions in person.
And we love to do that.
Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Quite an honor, Gary.
Well, may I say, you have blessed us with your work, and I wish the Lord would continue to bless you in your work, because I want to hear more.
Thank you so much, Gary. Always an honor to be here with you.
And it's always an honor to have L.A. here at Prophecy Watchers. Hey, you keep watching. We are. Thanks for joining us on Prophecy Watchers. You can find us on the web at prophecywatchers.com.